If we all ask ourselves what's happening in our industry currently, what are some of the key trends and changes we're seeing? Observing these industry trends is something that we all have to do, regardless of our place in the industry, whether we're clinicians, whether we're technicians, whether we're manufacturers. It's relevant to us all. And we have to recognise where our industry and business currently is, and where it's due to go in the next few years. And these questions have actually already been asked on a large scale in the UK by the BDIA, who release what they call a spotlight every other year. And I'm sure we're all familiar with that. So this spotlight, the one in 2019, over 400 people in the UK in 2019, this was mainly dentists, were asked in which technology or equipment they have already purchased. And in the top 3 positions were digital sensors, practice management software, and intraoral cameras. So these were things that people have already purchased. And just note on that last one, that's intraoral cameras and not scanners. So although scanners mostly do have that function to double up as a camera, it's technically not the same thing. It is slightly different. So one of the next questions in the same survey was, what do you intend to buy in the next year leading into 2020? I'm sure this has been slightly affected after this year, but the biggest percentage at 22% was people who answered they are intending to purchase an intraoral scanner for their next purchase. The next again was intraoral cameras. Again, slightly different, but ultimately scanners do double up as an intraoral camera as well. So in a global study, so moving away just from the UK here, what's happening elsewhere in the world? And in this global study, which was conducted by Dents by Sirona, in our largest global markets, which is the USA, Germany, and Japan, nearly 900 dentists were asked this time. And they were asked about 5 developments in digital dentistry, which they felt were most important. And intraoral scanners came in the lead, and by quite a good percentage here, at 62%. They were then asked when they intended to purchase a digital impression system for their practice, and more than 60%, if we combine the top 3 results, said within the next 5 years, and 46% that are planning to purchase within the next 2 to 3 years, and then nearly 20% that are looking to purchase within the next 12 months. So the dental industry globally, we can take from this, is moving this way. This isn't just a UK specific thing. This is happening across the globe, in all major developed markets. Dentistry is moving digital. So yeah, I'm not sure how surprising that is to everybody. I'm sure this has been something on a lot of people's radars for quite a while. So again, this is why we appreciate you coming on things like this this evening, because hopefully this can be something that gets the ball moving with your decision to go digital. So on that note, I would like to hand over to Clive, who has already been through the whole digital process, and he's here to tell you all about it. So take it away, Clive.
Thank you very much, Jack, for that introduction. So just I had a quick look at the poll results, and it's great that so many of you are excited about digital dentistry and are wanting to learn more about it. I want to maybe look at some of the barriers that are stopping you, perhaps a lack of confidence in making that next step, and hopefully this presentation tonight will help overcome some of the concerns that you're having. I have been involved with digital dentistry, particularly digital imaging, since 2005, when I made what at the time was a big step to get a cone beam CT scanner in my practice. It was the first one in Scotland. And we might now think That's not a big deal. There's lots of practices have got cone beam CT, but when you're one of the first to do something and you're ahead of the curve, it can be exciting, but it can also be quite daunting. And back then, imaging, even in implant dentistry, the standard was two-dimensional imaging. And over the past 15 years, we've moved from two-dimensional imaging, regular radiographs, to three-dimensional imaging being the standard, the gold standard in implant dentistry, increasingly oral surgery, and in other fields such as endodontics. I know that in one of the practices that I work in, one of my colleagues is a lot of endo, and he's increasingly using cone beam CT. So it's not just restricted to implants and neurosurgery. So we've moved from a two-dimensional world to 3D. I think the important thing is just like with Toy Story and Toy Story 2 and 3, is knowing when to get the benefits from 3D and when you don't need to have it. I'm a bit of a technology geek. I love my my toys and my gadget. I have I've been an Apple fan since 1989 when I had my first Mac Plus, and that was me. There was a Mac museum in Prague, and I visited it. It was kind of like heaven for me. So I love technology. I love it in my house, in my car, and of course in my dental practice and all the dental practices that I work in. So of course, being an innovator, I have an electric car. In fact, I'm onto my third electric car. I've had two BMW i3s and I've now got a Tesla. I love it. I love the technology. I just, it's amazing when you see the Tesla driving and steering along the motorway. And it is the future, and we've got it now. And it's the same in dentistry. There's so much happening, and I just couldn't encourage everybody watching tonight to get on that digital journey. There's an interesting curve, and Jack, it was interesting actually looking at the slide that you showed where you'd assessed what your customers were looking to buy over the coming year. There's actually a well-known curve called Rogers curve of innovation adoption. It was developed by an American sociologist, Fert Roger, in the 60s. So this concept where we have people will adopt technology at different stages has been well known. And we may see that in myself. I've been an innovator in many ways in dentistry, where I adopted cone beam CT scanning 15 years ago. I wasn't an innovator in intraoral scanning. I was probably an early adopter. And we can see how there are those who will, join this journey now, maybe in the early majority. And there'll be others who 15, 20 years from now, they will still not have adopted intraoral scanners as the laggards. And I've seen this in my practicing career in practice management software. So when I was a VT over 25 years ago, we were one of the few practices, my trainer had a computer in the practice. That was seen as being innovative now. Whereas, over the past generation, virtually all practices are computerized. Not all practices, as Jack's study showed, have got digital x-rays. So there are still practices out there using wet film. And, we can have a discussion about that, but there are those who just won't adopt technology as quickly as others. I kind of think now is a time where, intraoral scanning is no longer for innovators. It's no longer for early adopters. We're probably in the early majority stage now of acceptance of intraoral scanners in dental practice. And we see that as more and more practices start using the technology. Intraoral scanning is not new. CEREC has been around since the 80s. It was first developed in the University of Zurich in 1980, and the first patient study was in 1985. I can recall as a fourth-year dental student, there was a big international dental conference in Glasgow, and there was a trade show at it, and I saw one of the early CEREC milling machines, and how exciting it was in 1992 to see a machine that could mill a crown for you from a scan. Very different to the prime scan, but you can perhaps compare that to a black and white television and a high definition TV now. And there are so many advantages of digital dentistry. Once you've used intraoral scanning, there's the accuracy is just, it's amazing. There are far fewer errors. There's less occlusal errors. There's less fit issues, and there's less remakes. It's not 100%. Let's not say that, but you're talking about restorations fitting at, in the high 90% without any adjustment whatsoever. Of course, that means for dentists in their practice, it's more predictable and there's less stress. You're not getting anxious because you're having to take a new impression. You book the patient in for 10 minutes to fit a crown, and it doesn't fit, and you're having to take another impression, and the patient saying, why isn't this fitting? You've got a high 90s, I'd say 98% of digital restorations fit without any issues. And for patients, there's no impression materials. Patients love the technology, and we'll see this further in my presentation. They love the communication. They love to see the scans. No patient wants to look at an Algent impression of their teeth, but if you show them their teeth up on the scan, they love looking at it. For me as a dentist, I can instantly see how bad my margins are. I can instantly see if I've not reduced the occlusal surface enough. We can therefore reduce the likelihood of errors at that point, and we can prep the tooth further. So again, that's making things more predictable for the lab. I work with Martin Leca a lot, and Leca Dental in Glasgow, amongst other labs. But whether I choose to send my scans to Leca a few miles down the road, or to the Netherlands, or to the States, or anywhere in the world, we can instantly transfer your information from your intraoral scanner to the lab, just like that. Disadvantages, and I think we've alluded to it in the poll this evening. One of the barriers is lack of confidence. It's a new thing, and how do you overcome that? And I've seen that in some of the practices where scanners have been introduced. There are those dentists who love it and engage with it and problem solve any of the challenges and overcome them. And there are those that just, they treat it with a lot more caution. There's cost. There's cost of investing in hardware and software. There may be annual fees and update costs with some systems. There's a learning curve like everything else, and I'm constantly learning with digital dentistry, and that's one of the things that I love about digital dentistry. You get an upware and an update through, and the software changes, and you get new functionality, and you learn to do new things. So every day really is a school day in digital dentistry. You need to work with a digital lab. There's no point in having an intraoral scanner if your lab is not digital. And I think most labs have realized that they need to get on the digital journey in the lab side. And in this Venn diagram, we've got 3 circles, and they represent, for me, where digital dentistry all comes together. It's a benefit, firstly, for our patients. It's a benefit for the dentists and their teams, and it's a financial benefit. And digital dentistry brings the dentist's benefits, the patient experience, and the business gain together. It's a fantastic solution for many aspects of the practice. So as I said, we get away from alginate impression material. I mean, many of you won't understand this, but I come out in a cold sweat now when I have to take an alginate impression. So something I used to do like multiple times every day. It's like, alginate, why am I doing that? So I think the only time that I take alginate now is if I'm making a temporary crown or something like that, and I have to make a quick alginate. Other than that, all my impressions are digital, and even some of my implant full arch stuff, as we see shortly, is heading digital as well. So we're not wasting money on impression materials. We're not wasting money on impression trays. An Improgam impression is an expensive product. Polyvinyl siloxane is expensive. All these materials are expensive and cost, and digital dentistry helps to stop you wasting money. Look at all that waste, okay? Alginate paper, what a mess. Think about the damage to the environment. With digital dentistry, you're a more green practice, you're more environmentally friendly practice because you're not wasting money on products. I just wonder, Jack, if we can maybe do a wee poll here. Do people think, and they can maybe answer in the chat if they're not able to do a poll, do we think these guys are tree huggers or are they doing something else? So you can answer in the poll. Anyway, so getting back to alginate impressions, I mean, yuck. I mean, your patients really don't like having a big tray of alginate shoved in their gob, okay? And then they throw up all over you, or more likely they throw up all over your nurse. And I used to remember taking impressions, and kids were the worst, because you would take impressions for orthodontics and things, and they would chuck up, throw up, and it reminded me of, remember when people were sick in the classroom, in primary school, and it stank and you couldn't get rid of the smell for days in your surgery. You don't have that with digital dentistry, okay? There's none of that, patient throwing up. Patients far prefer it. And of course, in terms of infection control, apparently taking an alginate impression is an aerosol generating procedure. But I don't take impressions, and I don't have to transfer a potentially infected or disinfected product to the lab, because digital dentistry reduces that risk. Hopefully, with vaccinations starting tomorrow, we will be able to move away from this kind of image. I think we all yearn for the days when we can return to normal dental practice. So hopefully 6 months from now, we'll all be vaccinated and this will be a nasty memory. And one of the advantages of PrimeScan when we talk about infection control and compare it to other systems is that it is completely, there's no keyboard, there's no mouse, it's very, very easy to clean. Now, when I first looked at PrimeScan, I thought that's a nice idea, but it's not a big deal. We can, it's like any other keyboard or any other mouse. It's not a big deal. But now where we're even more concerned about infection control, having this completely wipe-free surface for me is a good advantage of PrimeScan. And as I think it's really important to point out, it's not just about dentists. This isn't just a benefit for our dentists and our patients. It's a benefit in the teams that we work in for our nurses. Our nurses, if they can take impressions, they can take intraoral scans. So they could be taking your scans, for you. They could be trained to do that. It involves your nurses in the process. We work more closely with our dental labs. I've got a great relationship with dental labs. But as you become more involved with the technology, you engage more with the labs and the technicians. So it's about teams. So old school, these are some impressions. And this is what we're used to. We've already spoken about patient comfort, the patient experience, the cost of these materials, and the waste involved. And this is one of the slides. I've got a couple of slides from Martin. This is, showing some of the impressions that they get at the labs. I go into the labs and sometimes you look at the impressions and you think, well, I would have never done an impression that was like that. But impression materials drag, they tear, air blows, all these inaccuracies that can be introduced at multiple stages through the analog tech workflow are eliminated with digital impressions with intraoral scans. So this is the Leca Dental, old school models being poured up. And again, it's labor intensive, it takes time. And on the more, on waxing up chromes, these are highly skilled jobs. And there's a problem in dental labs, is that there's not enough technicians coming through being trained in these skills. And the digital workflow, there are advantages in terms of the way things are produced on the lab side. I know Martin's going to have talked about that. And as I've already said, the ease with which we can transfer information from the practice to anywhere in the world. And these are the way that the labs, you send information from the intraoral scanner. Most of them have sort of cloud-based things. So we've got CEREC and CEREC Connect as the way that PrimeScan files are sent to the lab. And things are changing big time in the lab. The old techniques of burnout and wax elimination are being replaced with addition and subtraction manufacturing. And this isn't something that's just in the lab. The CEREC mill, of course, is subtraction manufacturing. We've got a CEREC mill in one of the practices, another mill. And 3D printing, I've been involved with 3D printing now for about 4 years. And 3D printing will increasingly become a part of the way that we produce dental products in our own practices. So which intraoral scanner do you choose from? One of the real disappointments of this whole COVID thing is it looks like I won't be going to IDS 2021 in Cologne in March, because I don't think it's going to be quite the same event. IDS, for those of you that haven't been, is this big international dental show. It's held every 2 years. And it's absolutely massive. And I would encourage everyone to try and get out to IDS at some stage in their career. There are currently over 15 intraoral scanners on the market. So how do you know which one to choose? I work in several practices. I work in, I think, 7 at the last count. And I work with 4 intraoral scanners. And whilst I'm here to talk about PrimeScan with Dentsply Sirona, I do work with the Atero, Trios, Medit, and PrimeScan. And I'll explain later why I believe that PrimeScan is the best scanner that I use. There are a couple of other very good scanners that I work with there, but there's only one of those scanners that I wouldn't buy myself, but it's in one of the practices that I've got it. I'll see if you can work out which one that I wouldn't get. I'm not going to say. And one of the good things about PrimeScan is that you're not restricted to Dentsply implants. You're not restricted to Dentsply software. It's open. If you want to export into other programs, if your lab uses other software, you can use your PrimeScan in the practice and send it to any lab using any software. I use implant studio from 3Shape. It's the way I started to plan implants digitally, and I export from PrimeScan into 3Shape. So it's important to understand that one of the advantages of PrimeScan is it's an open system. You're not handcuffed to one scanner or one aligner system like a certain other well-known scanner, which is probably the one that I would least likely buy. And one of the advantages of PrimeScan is that there's no annual licensing fee. One of the other scanners there, it's a really good scanner. It's almost as good as PrimeScan, but not quite that good. But a real downside for one of the other scanners that I work with is there are substantial annual licensing costs to use the scanner, to use the software for designing crowns, and there's more costs for using Implant Studio. So there's quite substantial costs can mount with some of the companies that have got annual licensing fees. There's none of that with PrimeScan, which is a real plus for PrimeScan. I've already shown you the kind of wipe-free surface with PrimeScan. There's no wires, there's no clutter. It moves around, and you know, again, the scanner on the left-hand side is a great scanner, but the wires can be a bit of a faff sometimes, whereas CEREC is just neat and tidy. Again, no wires. And for me, the key selling point of PrimeScan compared to the 4 other intraoral scanners I use, and I can't talk about 11 intraoral scanners that I don't use, but the 4 that I work with are 4 of the biggest scanners used in the UK. The quality of the scans and the speed of the scans that you get with PrimeScan is unparalleled. This is a scan of a endocrown, and the ease with which PrimeScan can capture detail in the pulp chamber really is so impressive. And in implant dentistry, we use PrimeScan. The way, again, the depth of that scan, it's not just scanning the soft tissue, but look at how much detail that you can get in the depth of the scan, in the internal geometry of the implant abutment connection. You just don't get that with other scanners. You'll see the abutment, but you're not going to see that level of detail with any other scanner. One thing that I've been working on with Dentsply is we're doing a beta study of full arch implant scanning. We know that there's been questions raised about the accuracy of intraoral scanners when scanning the full arches. So what we're doing is in patients who have got analog models from immediate load cases, where we take a model at the time of implant surgery, so we know we've got a model that fits. We're then taking a full arch scan with PrimeScan, and we're comparing the accuracy of the PrimeScan with the surgical impression. So watch this space as we work on that project. And if you want to go that next step, you don't have to if you just want to stick to PrimeScan and send your work out to the lab. But if you're in a practice where there's the demand for it or you're interested in it, CEREC is just a superb piece of equipment engineering. It is just mind-blowing. I used to be, if I'm honest, a bit of a skeptic about CEREC. I thought, I can't be bothered, just take the scan and send it to the lab. You know, why do I want to do that? But when I see the results that we can get, and the patients love it. The patients love the same day, the same session restoration. So I have actually been completely one round. And whilst I still send the big stuff out to the lab, inlays, onlays, crowns, we can do in-house. And that's maybe not something you're going to adopt straight away, but it's something you can certainly add into your digital workflow and your digital practice. And again, teamwork. There's the barrier between the dentist and the dental technician will break down if you start to develop skills where you're milling and designing your own crowns. If you're staining and glazing, you can get your nurse to do this. Many dentists working with CEREC involve their nurses in the design of crowns and staining and glazing. And again, it's giving your team additional skills which they wouldn't have without digital dentistry. And these are just some clinical examples of crowns that I've made. And I am no dental technician, but if I can make crowns that look like this, then everybody watching this webinar tonight can. And again, that's another one of an endo crown. Again, you can see how the prime scan has captured the information from the floor of the pulp chamber, and our restoration has been milled to fit. And as I said, patients absolutely love seeing their intraoral scan, and they love seeing teeth being milled. They take pictures of it, videos, they share it with their friends, and then they see the tooth coming out of the mill and getting fitted or glazed and fitted. So for me, Prime Scan is simply the best. It's the best intraoral scanner. I think that Dentsply is the best dental company. And the reason I'll say that is not just to impress Jack and the team, but because there's many other, if you look at the scanners here tonight, Medit, 3Shape, they're great scanners, but they're not joined up dental companies. With Dentsply, you've got implants, restorative material, imaging, you've got a full range of products. And that's one of the real strengths for me of working with Dentsply. It is the best digital workflow. Again, I use some other implants from time to time, not just Astra from Dentsply. There are some other systems I use, and they just don't have the digital workflow and digital backup that I see with Dentsply. And I just think that Prime Scan is better than all the rest. So I think that's me. And I'll hand back to Jack.
Thank you very much, Clive. I love that last slide. Simply the best. Great.
I meant, Jack, Jack, I just meant to actually say, and again, this is the reps that I work with at Dentsply are absolutely fantastic. The team up here, Kirsty, Heather, Dan, and Wendy, the support that they give the practices is phenomenal, and you just really don't see that with some of their companies, and I do mean that very sincerely.
Great, no, fantastic. I'm sure they'll be really happy with those shout outs, but it's really good to hear. I mean, obviously, there is a fantastic team up there in Scotland, as there is across all of the UK as well. So I know, obviously, personally, we don't get to work too much together because obviously I'm down in the opposite ends of the country. But that's really fantastic to hear about the team in Scotland. So it's very appreciated. I'm sure they'll love that. So thank you for that. I'm now going to move into the next section. So we won't spend too long on this because Clive has actually covered quite a lot of this actually, which is really nice. But if we think now, let's list out some of the things that we should really take into consideration when we are making that decision. You might find yourself in a position where you pick maybe 2 or 3 scanners that you want to look at and compare them side by side. So what should you look for? And these are going to be some pointers on that. So first of all, I would say, and this is probably one of the first things that comes to mind when it comes to scanners, is the overall speed. It's not the most important thing. However, the reason it is important is because if we think about what we're doing here, and if we take a second to think about how the labs are creating 3D models, so they're using extraoral scanners. And essentially that is somewhere where you place a model that you've taken from an impression, and then it perfectly turns all the way around, scans every nook and cranny of it perfectly, and it's all machine operated, which is fantastic. But as with everything, dentists, it's a little bit different because we're working intraorally. And because of that, the human hand, it's not a machine, so you can make any kind of erratic movement as you take a scan around an arch, and that can be difficult when you're using a scanner that isn't quick, because they like to stitch images in a sequential way, and if for a moment that is broken, sometimes it can be really difficult for some scanners to pick up where you last left off. And simply put, the faster the scanner is, the easier that it's going to be able to keep up with the way that your hand is moving. And we'll get a good idea of that from when I take a scan a little bit later. So on top of that, it's not just how quick the camera can keep up with us, but also how fast it can actually acquire that data. So keeping up with us is great, but how much data is it actually picking up when we move quickly? So something really important to consider. I think, when you're out there and you're testing models, testing the scanner on patients or on some of your staff, I think first of all, it shouldn't take longer than about a minute and a half to scan a model. And then when it comes to scanning an actual patient, when we've got soft tissues to contend with, I think really anything that takes longer than about a minute and a half per arch is starting to get on the slower side of what we're seeing on the current marketplace with scanners like the Prime Scan. The next most important thing I would say is the accuracy. So speed is fantastic, but what would be the point if the quick impression that we're taking is less accurate than the traditional impressions that we used to taking? So the whole point of moving digital is so that we improve every aspect of our workflow, and the accuracy should improve as well. And that's again where we're pleased to say how accurate the Prime Scan is. Clive made reference to something fantastic happening at the moment with full arch implant cases, which will hopefully soon be validated. But yeah, essentially the accuracy is going to ensure that when you take an impression, the restoration that you get back from the lab or that you create chairside from a milling machine is going to fit perfectly first time without any remakes, retakes. It's just going to fit like a glove. So the next thing we should consider, and this is something I think people do overlook a little bit, but it's the ease of use of the scanner. If you think how many impressions you take every day, you can now replace that with how many impressions you're going to be taking with a scanner, which means that it's going to be in your hand for quite a lot of the day. And if it's quite a clunky system, if the software's clunky, if the camera's a bit cumbersome to use, if the overall package in terms of the where the scanner sits, if any of that isn't optimal, it's going to be a bit of a pain to use. And you're going to get to that stage where you're not going to want to use the digital impression scanner because it's too slow, it's too cumbersome. So I think that is a big thing to consider. And again, referencing back to Clive's presentation, just seeing that sort of makeshift cart with a laptop, all the wires and the scanner connected to it. Obviously, that isn't going to be as easy to use as something like the Prime Scan, which is a self-contained registered medical device, which just looks neat and can just be pushed away to the side of the room when not needed and can just be brought to you when it's needed. But also, we're in 2020, soon to be in 2021. Really, a scanner at this point in time should, I think it goes without saying, it should be able to take a scan, full arch scan, without the need for any powder and in full color. So these are things that should be standard now. However, then they're not currently a completely standard thing when it comes to scanners. There are still some scanners out there that don't hit both those bits of criteria. And I think lastly on ease of use is also how the software reacts to foreign objects like soft tissue. Obviously, it's all well and good. We can take an impression of teeth and gum, but what happens when we get tongue? What happens when we get our glove? What happens when we get cheek in the scan? It should really make your life easy and cut all of that out automatically, rather than having to delete the whole scan and starting again. When it comes to something else to consider, connectivity is really important. Again, making another reference to Clive's presentation, talking about how it integrates with a lab and also a milling machine. This is really important because it's all well and good, we can take an impression, but what can we do with it afterwards? The overall goal of this is to make something with it, to get it over to the lab, to send it over to our chairside mill. If it's not easily connected to different services, then what's the point? So ensure that it's an open system, so you can openly export files you can use with any other manufacturer or any other service. It helps as well, just to make our life a whole lot easier, if the software that we take the impressions in is able to connect directly to the lab, you're able to communicate directly with the lab through there, and it just cuts down on the extra steps we have to do. We're all busy, and if you're taking multiple impressions, that's multiple lines of communication you potentially have with your technician trying to talk to you through WhatsApp. You've got WeTransfer to send the files, email, phone, text, so many forms of communication about so many cases. It's much easier, make your life a lot easier if everything is combined into a single piece of software. Again, coming to the end now, but with something to consider as well is the training and education that's offered as part of the system. I'm sure all manufacturers intend their devices to be as easily accessible and usable as possible, but this is dentistry. This is a profession, and it's something where we're going to need training for it. Even though the training doesn't necessarily take a huge amount of time, it definitely is important, and especially within dentistry, being clinician-led, I think is the best way that it could be done. So always check what the support is like from the manufacturer in terms of courses that are provided, in terms of ongoing support, like Clive said, with reps and that kind of thing, and tech support lines. And lastly, when it comes to the service and support, again, I don't think any manufacturer would like to have any issues with their products, definitely not. But if and when they do appear, after you've had the machines for a long time, if they ever do crop up, you need to have that backup there. Know that you can get in touch with somebody easily, that the manufacturer and the supplier you're dealing with is reputable, has got a few years experience in this sort of thing, and is well recognized in the dental market. So it needs a good system behind it for any service and support. So that brings me on to the next stage. Obviously, we've already heard from Clive on how he thinks this is the best scanner currently available. It's the best scanner that he's got. And hopefully in this next stage, I'm going to show you, when I perform the demonstration with the prime scan, we can show you why it convinced Clive and about 7,000 other prime scan customers last year on why it's the best scanner. And just before I move over to it, this is actually what I've got sat beside me and what I'm going to move to. This is the prime scan cart. So just to give you an idea of what this looks like, you can see it's got a massive screen. As Clive already mentioned, huge screen is a benefit for patient communication tool, makes it easy for patients to move around just using the touch screen. They can really look at parts of their mouth that they're not happy with. They can point out their next appointment or two to you on the screen, which is nice. It's great for auto simulations and that kind of thing. And the whole cart works on a battery, so it doesn't necessarily need to be plugged in, so it leaves you free to cart that between different surgeries. So if you bear with me about 10 seconds or so, I'm just going to move over to the prime scan beside me. There we go. So I'm just going to share my screen just to confirm. Clive, you can see me. Give me a thumbs up. Thank you. So I'm just going to share my screen. As this is the last Let's Talk of 2020, I thought I'd start with something a little bit different before I get into a scan. So this is something that I've scanned for our social media posts. I scanned one of my Christmas ornaments. And I think it's obviously, it's a bit of fun, but it does highlight how impressive I think the prime scan is as an intraoral camera. Whereas with other cameras and previously our previous generation cameras, you could maybe scan a second or two of this before it would just refuse to stitch anymore into the actual scan. I was able to just go within maybe a minute or two around this whole ornament, and it was able to scan that in complete 3D, which is insane. There was not a single issue with the stitching. I just think that's really impressive. So just something a little bit lighthearted to get started with. I'm just going to shut this down, and then I'm going to share my other bit of software. So this was taken in the Serec software, but I'm actually going to move to the lab software that we have. So bear with me. I'm just going to share that screen. There we go. So the Connect software I'm in here, this is where we take a scan and we send over to the lab. And we can also communicate to the lab using this chat box up here. But essentially it is as easy as typing in a patient. So I can pop my name in here. We can enter their date of birth just by touching the screen. Pop a dentist in here and then click add case. Now, what we can do, don't know how clearly this will show up on everybody's screen. I'll probably be quite a small thumbnail at this point, but I've got a model here, and on this model, I've got a single unit crown prep, just something simple for me to scan. And if I wanted to, this is totally optional. Again, there's no physical notes, but I can type digital ones. If I wanted to save me a little bit of time, I could actually just select the tooth that I'm looking to work on, which is a crown, and I can actually select the material. So I could say I would like this made from, say, zirconia as an example. And immediately, just within a couple of seconds, it saves me from having to type that at the end. It's just, these things are optional, but they're nice little touches that just streamline the whole process for yourself. So our workflows from left to right, you can see I'm now into the acquisition stage, which is the scanning stage. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the camera and just around this model. And you can see, just by hovering the camera just above the back tooth, you can see immediately that starts to get stitched into a model. So take the prime scan back over that area, and then if I show you on a scan here, scanning the occlusal, lingual, and then buccal. I mean, very roughly, that was probably about 10 seconds or so for me to acquire that whole model. Now you can see there's some areas like here where we've got what looks like a bit of a tear in the data, and that's just basically we call it a hole, and it's just somewhere where the camera hasn't quite seen yet, and it's visually represented to you there. So because the prime scan's so quick, it only takes a second for the camera to be pointed into that space, less than a second even, for that to pick up like that. So I'll just make sure I've got a few more bits here finished off. Okay. We can then move to the upper jaw. And now Clive, or anybody that uses a scanner, I'm sure would tell you, patients' tongues absolutely love the ends of intraoral scanners. So it's quite common to get those in a scan. So what I'd like to show you is how intelligently the prime scan would deal with this sort of thing. So if I keep, for example, my thumb in the scan here, let's pretend that was a tongue or a bit of cheek. Obviously it will scan pretty much anything, so it's stitched it into the scan. Now, in previous generations of our cameras and software, and with other scanners as well, you would then have to delete this entire scan and start again with the soft tissue out of the way, which, yeah, it's an inconvenience. Could be a huge inconvenience, could be a minor one, but it's an inconvenience. The technology is so intelligent now that it recognizes that teeth in a scan aren't going to move, but soft tissue will. So therefore, if it moves, it shouldn't belong in a scan. So what it will do, if I scan back over that area with the soft tissue gone, the prime scan will actually just cut it out of the scan. Now, because it recognizes that that object doesn't belong in the scan, if I reintroduce it, so if I bring my thumb back, you can see it's still scanning, but it's just going to refuse to put that into the scan, just like that. So really clever. I'll just finish this scan off here. Now, what's happening as I take the scan? Obviously, we're taking thousands of images and taking literally millions of 3D contrast points per second. But what's happening also is the camera's taking a shade reading, which is really useful because obviously we don't have to take a manual one. It's doing that for us. We just need to make sure we keep the camera calibrated every couple of weeks so that it stays accurate. So now that we've done the upper and lower jaw, I'm just going to get the patient's bite together and I'm going to take a bite reading. Just like that. And it takes a second or two. And what the software does is it recognizes there's our lower jaw, there's our upper jaw, and this is how they articulate together. If I wanted to, I could also take some intraoral pictures and videos and add those in the case, which is nice because we can combine everything, scan and images and videos in one file to send over to the lab. But I'm just going to click next. And what it's going to do here is it's going to process all of those models, all of those images, sorry, the layers and layers of images we've got. It's going to process the textures, the final shade, and we're going to get a much more realistic looking model in this next stage when it's the finished model. Again, this isn't going to look fantastic because it's just a completely opaque model, but it's just to give you an idea. So once we get the model, we'll have one final check over it, check for any holes, anything that we're missing that we might need. The amazing thing, obviously, with digital impressions is if we do have something like that, we can always come back into the acquisition and add just a little bit more information and then come back into the stage. We don't have to do the whole thing all over again, like we do with traditional impression material. So that's just finishing up, and there's our final impression. And we can see that there. I can just manipulate this using my fingers. So I can pinch the zoom and just have a look around there and check I'm happy with both. Okay, I am. So what I can do here is I can click connect, and this will ask me to log in. And in this account, so this is my DenseMeister Runner Connect account, what it's going to do is it's going to bring up all the labs that I use, and I can always add another one at any time. But it's going to upload this to the cloud so that when I'm ready to go, when I'm ready to submit this, once I've filled in all of my order details, because it's already in the cloud, it will literally just send straight away. So it's just uploading along the bottom, enter my details. I'm going to send this to, for example, send that to myself. I could set the return date, so I'll ask for a couple of weeks. I could enter in any details, so I could say, hi, please make insert. Select caps lock on, but just to give you an idea. All of our notes are now digital, and we can add attachments to this as well if we would like. Click add to cart. It's already uploaded to the cloud now. So all it takes is for me to click submit, just to enter my details one more time, and this will immediately get sent over to the lab. Because it's already in the cloud, it will literally just appear there. So bear with me another sort of 5 seconds or so while I move back over to the other screen. Okay, I'm just going to share my presentation. Here we go. So what will now happen is the lab will receive that scan in their Connect case center inbox, which is a dedicated portal for sending scans from a Dentsply Sirona scanner. This is something that comes free with every purchase of a Prime scan, but we are at the stage where a lot of labs are already set up with this anyway. So what they could then do is, if they're not happy with something, they could message you straight through the application. They could also log into your Prime scan while you're with the patient, and you just get that extra layer of security with digital impression. And as Clive mentioned again previously, the communication with the lab does improve when you're using digital technology. So with that, we are now coming towards the end of the evening. And again, please stay with us because we've got a little bit more to go through. But also we have got an extra special little bit from Clive on some stuff that he's working on and that I think you'll want to hear about. Again, if you've got any questions at all, you can save these to the end, or you can post them in the chat now and we'll address them at the end. So I'd encourage you to do that. On the screen there, so we've talked a lot about the Prime scan tonight, but it's not our only scanner that we have. So we do also have the other two options you can see on screen there, as well as some very rough prices in euros. So we do supply through regular suppliers. So obviously they would be able to give you a much more accurate price in sterling. You can see all of these compatible with SureSmile clear aligners, and you can see the one on the end there is a slightly more portable unit that we have, which can be taken between surgeries and between floors. As mentioned, all of them are compatible with SureSmile, which is Dentsply Sirona's own clear aligner service. Clive already touched on this. It's currently only officially large implant bridges are the only things that can't really be done yet with intraoral scanners. But with the Prime scan, obviously we're incredibly happy to say that we're pushing the limits of this. It's still a work in progress, but the progress is very, very positive, and we're hoping to have some news on this soon. And the pictures here, I'll just have to add, they've kindly been shared with us by Dr. Carlos Rapulo from Spain. So thank you for that. And the Prime scan is also has an extra application called AuraCheck, which is very useful for comparing two different scans from two different points in time. So you could highlight to a patient, for example, tooth wear, gum recession, plaque buildup, tooth movements. It measures all of that. And it can be a really convincing tool, for example, suspected bruxist, to visibly show how much wear they're actually having on their teeth. And lastly, before we get to the Q&A, just very quickly, I'd just like to talk about your digital journey with Dentsply Sirona. So Clive mentioned we're the largest global manufacturer of dental equipment and supplies. We currently have a total revenue of about $4 billion US dollars. That was in 2019. And this is actually evenly shared all across the world. We are not American-centric or Europe-centric. It's quite evenly distributed. And in the UK, we're based in Surrey, but most of our equipment is manufactured in Germany. And globally, we're a 15,000 strong team. So one of the proudest things that I have to say about Dentsply Sirona is its commitment to R&D and development of new products and innovations. And we actually do spend the most on this in the industry at over $150 million a year just to advance dentistry. And we do have the largest R&D platform in the industry with over 600 scientists and engineers. So we truly have a solution for every possible workflow you could imagine and every customer need that you could have. We've just got a little bit there about our seamless connections to all of these services like Azento, Simplant, Atlantis, SureSmile, and InLab. Completely seamless connection to those. And with that, I hope you'll consider letting Dentsply Sirona be the partner on your digital journey. If anything has interested you tonight, you can at any time visit dentsplySirona.com and book a one-on-one consultation with any one of our product specialists. Just go onto the website, click this orange button over there, and it will take you to these options. And whichever one you're interested in, just click that one, and you can then book the relevant time then that you're after with any one of the specialists. It's completely free, obviously, but that service is there if you would like it. So our time is now drawing to an end. We've nearly finished in good time, actually. So it's about 12 minutes past 8. So we did say we were going to finish around 7:30. So we will now open up for any questions. Have we had much come through in terms of, as you can see, the chat's been moving quite a bit. Let's see if we've got any to read out to you, Clive. So first of all, I'm just going in chronological order here. We've had a question: what is the current price of PrimeScan now? So the current price of PrimeScan, it really depends on what option you're looking for. There's two. There's the PrimeScan as a digital impression unit only, which essentially allows you to do everything other than CEREC. And then we've got additional bits of software like the Ortho simulator, and then also the AuraCheck software. But the prices really do vary. Again, if you like, I can go back to the rough slide for you to give you an idea in euros. But if you are looking for a more firm price, I suppose, the price of what you would actually pay, I would advise you to get in touch with myself or book a consultation with one of the Dentsply Sirona specialists, and we can actually arrange a quote for you, and that will give you a much more realistic sort of breakdown of what it could cost per month on finance. And it's really not, you know, it's compared to what a lot of people think these machines cost. When you break it down per month, it's quite surprising actually how affordable it can actually be. So you do have that option. Again, what's nice to add with the PrimeScan is there's no ongoing license fees, which is a big thing. It's something that people do get caught out with on other systems, but with the PrimeScan as a digital impression unit, once you pay for the machine, that is it. You get all the software updates for free. Things are a little bit different with CEREC because of the R&D, but as a digital impression unit, there isn't any. So the next question we've had, again, sorry, Clive, I think this is one for me to answer. Is PrimeScan compatible with Invisalign technology? Or maybe there is something that you want to add to this, Clive. But essentially, the PrimeScan isn't compatible in the sense that Align technology won't validate any new scanners, and they won't accept any scans from any scans that aren't taken from their own iTero scanner, unfortunately. So it is compatible with literally every other clear aligner system that accepts digital impressions, including SureSmile, obviously. But with Invisalign, they have lockdown. And I'm sure, Clive, is there anything you'd like to add to that as your frustrations as a dentist?
I mean, I can slightly get out of this by saying that I don't do any orthodontics myself, so don't use Invisalign or SureSmile. It does frustrate me where I see the iTero and Invisalign situation. There's nothing we can do about it, but there, Invisalign isn't the only aligner system out there. SureSmile is great, and SureSmile is open to scans from any scanner, not just PrimeScan. So PrimeScan is an open scanner that you can send to anyone. SureSmile can receive scans from anyone. So one of the good things about PrimeScan is there's no handcuffs.
Great, I really like that term. So we've had a nice, thanks for that, Clive. I think I've got another question for you in a second. We've had another question here, actually one for me to answer, sorry, Clive. What support do you provide after the purchase of PrimeScan? So the support, essentially, you'll get from two sides. You'll have the support from Dentsply Sirona, and then you've also got the support from the supplier that you purchased from. Ultimately, anything in terms of technical issues, anything that requires an engineer, that will be through your supplier. But if you purchase a PrimeScan digital impression scanner, you'll have the support from us in terms of actual handover training at the practice, ongoing support with remote access. So if you need any help or training, we can do that in practice or virtually. It really doesn't take a lot of training to learn how to use a PrimeScan as a digital impression unit. When we're talking about CEREC, there's a bit more to learn there in terms of the material selection and the burrs and that kind of thing. And we do have a 2-day new user course, which is included in the purchase for that. But that will need a little bit more ongoing support than just the PrimeScan as a digital impression scanner. We've had a nice bit of feedback here from James Miller.
Jack, can I maybe just add
go for it. Yeah.
There's a fantastic website called cdocs.com, which has excellent online training, video support, etc. On particularly CEREC. So that's something I maybe recommend. In addition to the support that you get directly from Dentsply Sirona, there's superb stuff on cdocs.com.
Perfect. No, I love cdocs. I did a lot of my own training when I moved into this role on cdocs, so learned a lot from that. It's a really great website. This is well, we've got a good bit of feedback from James Miller here. PrimeScan is an amazing scanner. Highly recommend. Thank you for that. That's very much appreciated. Question for you, Clive. How long does it take to scan a full arch in a patient's mouth?
So it depends on what you mean by a full arch. So a full arch, a dentate full arch, I would say, if I'm honest, less than a minute. I don't think, maybe not 10 to 20 seconds. If you want to go, if you get all the detail in, it's less than a minute. If you're taking a scan of an unrestored arch, maybe a teenager with orthodontics or somebody with no restorations or minimum restorations, that will scan far more quickly than if there are more restorations and more detail to be captured. But PrimeScan of all the scanners is the fastest, and I can, just comparing like for like, forget all the wires and all the other stuff. If you actually look at the scanner, PrimeScan is the fastest and most accurate intraoral scanner. Perfect.
Thank you, Clive. We've got a really good question here, actually, from Joseph. He says, if you're working on being able to do a full arch scan for implants, will this be additional software that can be downloaded to the PrimeScan, or is it more likely to be in the form of another new scanner? So I can answer that. Essentially, the PrimeScan is pretty much already able to do it. It's just the validation that we're working for. So there are plenty of people out there who are doing full arch implant cases with the PrimeScan as it currently is. So yeah, the software, the PrimeScan, that's all able to do that. But officially, the validation, manufacturers always obviously wait quite a while for results before they officially give the go ahead on the validation. And because obviously we wouldn't want to run into any issues if we prematurely say that, yes, this is possible. So, there will be some good news to share soon, I think. There's so many cases being done with it, but officially the validation is all we're waiting for. It's not a new scanner, it's not new software. Essentially, it's already capable of it. It's just that official word that we're waiting for. Anything to add, Clive?
No, so we've got at the moment 12 full arch cases that we're doing as part of this beta trial with Dentsply Sirona. The PrimeScan is all we need to scan full arch for implants. There's no additional equipment at all. I said, watch this space. I think there'll be some good news in the not too distant future.
Fantastic. A fantastic question, by the way. That was a really good question. So we've also had, as another one for you, Clive, what would you say is the biggest challenge of going digital?
I think it's accepting that you're constantly learning new technology, with updates. You get one digital success and then you want to engage with more. So don't just think of your prime scan as being the end point of going digital. I think you have to accept it's the beginning of a digital journey, and just adapting to positive but constant change and new software, just like with your mobile phone. It's updated regularly, you get a new one, and it will be the same with digital dentistry. But you need to get on that journey somewhere. You need to buy your first mobile phone, and before you can know about updates and different models. And you need to start the journey. So hopefully after tonight, going back to the polls at the start, we will have allayed some of the fears. You'll have learned about digital dentistry, and you'll feel that now is the time to go for it.
Excellent. Thank you, Clive. Got another question here. I think this is a great one for you, Clive. You maybe tie into your bit of news. Can it capture soft tissues well to make a digital denture yet?
If you don't mind, I'm going to present a couple of slides. I don't know when you want me to do that.
Yeah, you can go for that now, Clive. Yeah, we've still got some questions filtering through.
These are the little kind of bonus slides I'll stick in. So let me just.
I think it's a good segue into that, and I think it would address this question as well.
So a great question about digital dentures. I think it's important to point out that intraoral scanning is not just about orthodontics or CEREC, or implants. If you do a lot of denture work in your practice, you can use it for partial dentures, where you're getting peaks milled by the lab. And I've been working with digital dentures now for 3 years for complete dentures. And until relatively recently, I was sending work to the Netherlands where we had dentures milled by Avident. Over the past couple of months, 2 to 3 months, working with Leca Dental, and I know that Dentsply Barcelona have got a digital denture software program now as well. We are now 3D printing dentures, and I'm on to case 9. And we've done these in a couple of practices, so we're 3D printing dentures. It's a very good question about can you scan soft tissue. It is a whole lecture in itself. The answer is yes, you can scan soft tissue, but no, you probably shouldn't. Because whilst the prime scan can scan the soft tissue, my experience of digital dentures is that you use the prime scan or any other scanner to scan the denture. You take a reline impression or impression of the denture and you scan that, and therefore you're combining digital accuracy with an impression or copy type technique. So yes, you can scan soft tissue, and I do that for immediates. But with digital dentures, my protocol is generally to scan impressions or dentures directly. And you can see these are some of the cases from of digital dentures that we're doing. The ones on the right-hand side is an immediate case where we have scanned the hard and soft tissue prior to extractions. And the pictures on the left-hand side are complete dentures where we have done denture scans. So I hope those slides conveniently answer that question.
Great, no, that's perfect. There's another little mini question we've got on the end of that one. Can it reverse scan the impression? So do you have much experience on scanning already taken impressions with it?
So this is something that I'm working on at the moment with Dentsply. So I don't think it can reverse scan impressions. Maybe you can help me more with that.
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, you can scan it by all means. What we're currently, well, currently it's not a feature in the chairside software, is the ability to then flip that inside out, like as if you were casting up a model. However, in our lab software, you're able to do that. So that's more of a lab feature, but absolutely, if you were talking about from a dentist point of view, taking a scan of an existing impression and sending that over to your lab, they can absolutely flip that inside out. So it's just not something that really you would do yourself, essentially, or at least not yet.
I think, Jack, there's somewhere where I need to have a sit down with your research and development team.
Great. So
it's a fantastic question.
yeah,
That was asked about dentures. I think it's something that I think there's a little bit of room for development on the scanner, on being able to reverse scan. The point about it's a superb scanner at scanning the soft tissue. Whether you should do that or not is another matter.
Great. Perfect. So we've got another question here. Do you think the OmniCam AF is a good choice for a beginner? What are the pros and cons and concerns about it? So the OmniCam AF, just to make everybody aware, you did see it on that slide previously. The AF, I wonder if I can get that out. The AF is basically a slightly more portable OmniCam that we have. Just getting this up for you. You can see it on the right hand side of the screen shortly there. And essentially that connects to a PC, and the whole purpose of it is to have, you know, say you're working across 2 sites or across 2 floors, rather than having, you know, a prime scan at both. You could potentially have a PC, one in one location, one in the other location, and you can take that single camera in a little carrying case between the 2 sites. So yeah, it's a great camera. It's a great solution for somebody in that situation. Is it a good choice for a beginner? Yes, we do have quite a few beginners that that are buying the AF and have bought the AF. My personal recommendation would be, you know, if you don't necessarily need that portability of taking it between 2 different sites, I think always the best solution is to have a prime scan as a cart. I think you know, speaking to dentists, I think what a lot of people's concern is obviously in terms of the difference in price, and you can see the rough difference in price there between those 3 models. Ultimately, when you break it down per month in terms of what you'll be paying, there's actually relatively small difference between them. And I think for most people, having the prime scan or OmniCam as a cart would probably work better, but you know, that's just my 2 cents on it. But yes, overall it is a great scanner. It's just the only con I would say of it is I'm trying to think of a negative about it. Essentially it is the same thing, just essentially across 2 sites. I suppose one negative really is that if there is demand at 2 different sites for it, that camera is only going to exist in one of those sites. So I think quite quickly, once you adopt technology like that, you see the demand for it from your associates and yourself obviously going up. And you quite quickly get to the point where you would actually be investing potentially in a second scanner across those 2 sites. And then this question starts to become, you know, would it have been better to just go for the cart system in the first place? But you know, it's quite a big topic, but hopefully that sort of gives you some idea on the AF. But overall, yes, it is a great scanner for a beginner. So the next question we've got is, so we'll just go through some final questions. How accurate is the prime scan for the soft tissue profile in the aesthetic zone? So specifically, I'm not sure if there's anything you can add here, Clive, but in terms of the accuracy in the aesthetic zone, I mean the accuracy is overall top notch. So maybe I'm not understanding the question precisely.
I'm not quite clear on it either.
Yeah.
I mean, it captures, as I said, it captures soft tissue incredibly well, and the quality of the scan is second to none. And I'm comparing that with the other scanners that I use.
Okay, fantastic. So, okay, final question. When will the prime scan be Invisalign certified? So we're not expecting any certification, and I don't think any manufacturer that's not Align Tech, I don't think anybody should be holding out on Invisalign validation. In the last few years, the policy of Align Technology, it has been essentially not to cooperate with other manufacturers and to instead lock the Invisalign brand down to a single scanner. So I would personally say I wouldn't expect that to come anytime soon. So I would take it at that, but take into account again that there are other much more open systems such as SureSmile, which will accept scans from anywhere, that you could be utilizing that are very, very similar to Invisalign. So that seems to be it in terms of questions. We had quite a few come through, so thanks for everybody for contributing. If you've got anything extra that you'd like to add, again, reach out to us or book a one-on-one consultation. That's no problem. So to finish off, let's just get back to the last slide. And I think here, I'd just like to thank everybody for attending tonight. Thanks for being with us. Thank you, Clive, for a great presentation, fantastic input on the questions you've had at the end as well. It's been invaluable. And I really hope everybody who's joined tonight, I hope this small event has hopefully raised your interest in starting your own digital journey, or if you're already there, maybe moving forwards with something else. So this was the last Let's Talk event of this year. So thanks for everybody that has attended tonight and has attended other ones as well. We will be resuming these next year, probably a very similar format, but just stay tuned to our social media channels like Facebook and Instagram, and you can find out more information about it there. And on that note, I wish you all a nice evening. Goodbye.